The Taliban just did something that scared the whole US insanely. It all started when America's longest war ended in chaos in August 2021. Helicopters evacuating from Kabul while desperate Afghans fell from plane wheels. The Taliban inherited a shattered nation with zero international support. Then, something absolutely impossible happened. The Taliban just finished what America couldn't do in 20 years. And the construction they're completing right now isn't just changing Afghanistan. It's threatening to reshape the balance of power across two continents. China knows it. Russia knows it. And the Pentagon is scrambling to understand how this happened. What you're about to see isn't just shocking. It's a masterclass in how infrastructure can be more dangerous than nuclear weapons. Stay with me, because the numbers I'm about to reveal will make you question everything you thought you knew about modern warfare. Let me show you what $684 million and raw determination can actually build. Picture this. Right now, at this exact moment, 6,000 men are working in 50-degree desert heat, moving 45,000 cubic meters of earth every single day. That's roughly 18 Olympic swimming pools of dirt. Daily, they're building the Kosh Tepe Canal, a 285-kilometer artificial river that's wider than a football field and deeper than a 3-story building. Here's the number that should stop you cold. 73% complete. The Taliban started this project in 2022 with zero international support, zero foreign engineers, and zero respect from the global community. 3 years later, they're 3/4 done with the largest irrigation project in Asia. For context, California's State Water Project took 17 years to complete with unlimited funding and cutting-edge American engineering. The Taliban is outpacing that timeline using Chinese excavators and sheer willpower. But here's where this gets absolutely wild. This isn't just about water. Let me explain what this canal actually does and why Washington is losing sleep over it. The Amu Darya River flows from Afghanistan through Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan before dying in the desert where the Aral Sea used to exist. For decades, Afghanistan watched its own water flow to neighboring countries while its people starved. The Taliban looked at that river and said, "Not anymore." When this canal goes operational in December 2027, it will divert 10 cubic kilometers of water annually. That single number will irrigate 550,000 hectares of farmland, an area larger than the entire state of Delaware. Afghanistan will increase its agricultural capacity by 33% overnight. They'll go from food dependent to food independent in one construction project. But here's the geopolitical earthquake nobody saw coming. By taking that water, Afghanistan is cutting the supply to 3 countries by up to 35% during drought years. 3 countries that happen to be critical to American interests in Central Asia. Uzbekistan just watched its $1.2 billion cotton industry get put on life support. Turkmenistan's grain production is facing collapse, and Tajikistan's hydroelectric power generation could drop by 20%. These aren't predictions, these are engineering calculations based on flow rates that don't lie. The Taliban didn't fire a single bullet, they didn't invade anyone, they didn't violate any borders, they just turned a valve on their own territory, and 3 American partner states are now facing existential water crises. This is 21st century warfare, and most people don't even realize it's happening. Now let me tell you about the engineering nightmare that should have stopped this project before it started, because what the Taliban is pulling off shouldn't be possible. And the story of how they overcame each obstacle reveals something far more disturbing than just construction expertise. The canal has to cross the Kizilkum Desert, one of the most hostile environments on Earth. Summer temperatures hit 50 degrees Celsius. Sandstorms can bury equipment in hours. The soil is so porous that early test sections were losing 15% of water to seepage before it traveled 10 kilometers. Soviet engineers tried solving this exact problem for decades and failed every time. The Taliban's solution? In March 2023, they brought in Chinese engineers from the Xinjiang Construction Corps who'd perfected desert irrigation in western China. The Taliban imported polymer lining technology added $80 million to the budget, and solved in 6 months what had stumped Soviet engineers for 40 years. They're importing cutting-edge expertise and executing with precision that rivals Western projects. Then there's the Balkab River crossing, and this is where the story becomes genuinely dramatic. To keep the canal flowing, engineers had to design a 2.3-kilometer aqueduct suspended 15 meters above the riverbed. This isn't a simple bridge. It's a massive concrete channel that has to carry millions of liters of water across a river that floods violently every spring. This single structure costs $120 million, nearly 18% of the entire project budget. The engineering challenge was brutal. The limestone formations beneath the river were so hard, they shattered 6 industrial drill heads in the first month of work. Each drill head costs $400,000. That's $2.4 million in destroyed equipment before they even figured out the right drilling technique. Instead of quitting, the Taliban brought in Pakistani specialists who'd worked on the Karakoram highway tunnels, some of the most dangerous and technically demanding construction in world history. Then, July 2024 happened, and everything nearly collapsed. Monsoon season hit harder than meteorologists predicted. The Balkab River swelled to 3 times its normal flow. Temporary cofferdams protecting the construction site, structures designed to hold back the river while crews worked, collapsed under the massive water pressure. Water rushed through the excavation area at 40 kilometers per hour, a wall of mud and debris that swept away everything in its path. 11 workers died that day. Their bodies were recovered 3 days later, 15 kilometers downstream, buried in riverbank mud. The international engineering community expected the project to halt for months, maybe permanently. Most democratic countries would have stopped for safety reviews, environmental impact assessments, worker compensation negotiations, insurance investigations. The Taliban held a funeral. They paid each family $50,000 from project funds, and they rebuilt the cofferdams in 3 weeks. By August 15th, less than a month after the disaster, construction had resumed. By December, the aqueduct foundation was 40% complete, right on schedule. Here's what's even more insane. They're doing all of this while fighting an active insurgency. ISIS-K hasn't given up on destabilizing the Taliban government, and the canal represents a perfect propaganda target. Destroy the canal, prove the Taliban can't protect major projects, undermine their legitimacy. In June 2024, an ISIS improvised explosive device destroyed a $2 million Chinese-made bulldozer near Ankoy. The explosion killed 2 operators instantly and wounded 4 others. Security footage later released by Taliban officials showed the massive fireball, visible from 3 kilometers away. The attack was designed to create fear, to make contractors abandon the project, to prove the Taliban couldn't provide security. The Taliban's response wasn't to hold security meetings or conduct threat assessments or hire international security consultants. Within 24 hours, they established 500-meter security perimeters around every single construction site across all 285 kilometers. Armed patrols began conducting sweeps every 6 hours, and within 48 hours, they publicly executed 3 ISIS suspects in the region, displaying the bodies as a warning. By the end of the week, construction equipment was back online. By the end of the month, they'd made up the lost time. American contractors couldn't maintain operations like this, even with unlimited budgets, air support, private security firms, and cutting-edge surveillance technology. The Taliban is doing it with pickup trucks, AK-47s, and brutal pragmatism. They've turned infrastructure construction into a military operation where delays aren't tolerated, obstacles are eliminated rather than negotiated with, and the timeline is sacred. But here's where the story takes a turn that should genuinely alarm every American, because the canal is just Phase 1. Phase 2, approved in January 2025, adds another $1.2 billion and 180 kilometers of secondary canals branching into 3 provinces. This expansion will irrigate an additional 300,000 hectares, pushing Afghanistan's food self-sufficiency to 140% of domestic needs by 2032. That means exports. That means revenue. That means a Taliban regime so economically stable, it doesn't need international recognition to survive. And who's financing Phase 2? China just committed $400 million through the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Russia pledged engineering support through Rosatom's water management division. Iran is providing concrete and steel at subsidized rates to ensure its own water interests are protected. Let me connect the dots here because this is where infrastructure becomes strategy. The canal doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a larger transformation that's happening so fast most people haven't noticed. In May 2025, China, Pakistan, and the Taliban signed a trilateral agreement extending the $60 billion China-Pakistan Economic Corridor directly into Afghanistan. That's a road and rail network connecting Beijing to the Arabian Sea, passing straight through Afghan territory. The Taliban collects transit fees. China gets access to Central Asian markets. Pakistan gets regional influence. America gets nothing. Meanwhile, the Trans-Afghan Railway Project, a $4.8 billion line connecting Uzbekistan to Pakistan through Afghanistan, breaks ground this year. Transit time from Central Asia to the Indian Ocean drops from 35 days to 4 days. Every cargo container that uses this route, instead of shipping through Russia or flying through Western airspace, is money and influence flowing away from American allies. Then there's TAPI, the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan-Pakistan-India gas pipeline, dead for 20 years. In September 2024, the Taliban restarted construction on Afghan soil. If completed, this pipeline moves 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually, generating close to $1 billion in annual revenue for the Taliban. That's $1 billion they didn't have to ask permission to earn. The Kashtepa Canal isn't just about water. It's the foundation for everything else. You can't build railways without water for workers. You can't attract pipeline investments without proving you can complete massive projects. You can't negotiate with neighboring countries unless you control something they desperately need. The Taliban understood something America never did. Control the resources and you control the region. Control the region and recognition doesn't matter. Now let me show you the two futures this canal creates, because both of them are bad for the United States. Future 1. The canal succeeds. Afghanistan becomes food self-sufficient by 2030, then a net exporter by 2032. The Taliban regime stabilizes economically, proves it can govern effectively, and forces neighboring countries to negotiate recognition. China expands Belt and Road deeper into Central Asia with Afghanistan as a willing partner. Russia brokers water-sharing agreements that exclude American input. U.S. sanctions become irrelevant because the Taliban doesn't need Western markets anymore. Future 2. The canal fails. Engineering problems cause catastrophic water loss. The Taliban's legitimacy crumbles. Afghanistan collapses into civil war again. 10 million refugees flood toward Europe through Iran and Turkey. Central Asian countries face water wars, destabilizing Chinese trade routes and Russian security interests. Both Moscow and Beijing are forced to intervene militarily, while America remains absent. Either way, U.S. influence in the region drops to zero. The Kashtepa Canal is 73% complete. Phase 1 finishes in December 2027. Phase 2 completes in 2031. By 2032, the Taliban will control enough water, food, and transit routes to hold Central Asia hostage. And there's nothing Washington can do about it because we walked away. Here's the final number that should shock you: $684 million. That's what the Taliban spent to threaten American strategic interests across 2 continents. For context, the U.S. spent $7 billion on a single military base in Afghanistan that the Taliban captured in 11 days. The water flows in 2027, And when it does, the map of Central Asia changes forever. Are we ready for what comes next? Drop your thoughts below.